Hello, and thank you for joining us in another episode of Behind the Bar. As always, I'm your host, Timmy Tayo, and the Premier League season is exactly 3 weeks away from today in the first game to open the 25-26 season. And I'm sure, like many of you, I'm truly excited for a brand new season because with a brand new season brings fresh hope, fresh optimism, and a fresh start for every team to stake their claim. We have new signings all around the league, and it should be one of the best seasons yet, with many teams vying for the title, top four, European positions, and then of course, 3 teams are going to be relegated as well. So in today's episode, we're going to give our early prediction of how we think the Premier League is going to pan out in this new season. And of course, last year, Liverpool topped the league, winning by 10 points to spare and lifted the trophy. And they've gone on to do incredible things in the transfer market, spending big to bring in Florian Wirtz. They brought in Jeremy Frimpong. They brought in Kerkez from Bournemouth, Ekitike from Frankfurt, and rumors that they're going to bring in Alexander Isak from Newcastle once they sell off 1 or 2 players to make room for him. And that's certainly a scary proposition, and I think the smart money would be on Liverpool to repeat, but I'm not sure that's what I will predict. So looking at the challengers for the title, I think the top 4 is generally the teams that are at least starting out in the first few months to challenge to lift the Premier League. And of course, Liverpool, we've talked about, we'll come back to them in a second. Arsenal, they've three-peated runners-up, right? Second place position for the last 3 seasons. And of course, we know that they've been missing that one key striker to get them across the finish line. They've seemed to run out of gas, run out of steam in the last few months of the season over the last 3 years. And adding Victor Gyökeres to that jigsaw seems to be the missing piece of that puzzle. And so going to be interesting to see how he fits in. I think Arteta is probably going to want to build his squad, build his game plan around getting chances into Victor for him to power them to the Premier League title, to make that jump from second to first place, which I think is probably the hardest jump to make. Of course, you have Chelsea, the World Club champions, according to FIFA. But credit to them, I think they had a wonderful competition during the summer, outclassing and beating the European club champions in PSG in a masterclass by Maresca, guiding his team to that World Club Cup. And so they've also done very well in the transfer market. Brought in Liam Delap from Ipswich. They brought in João Pedro from Brighton, and they're not done. I'm seeing links to Javi Simmons and a couple other pieces I'm sure that they're going to bring in to strengthen their team, to make a shout, to make a push for the Premier League. And then I think Man City, right? You're never going to write off Man City when it comes to a title race. Yes, they fell off last season. Yes, Erling Haaland didn't live up to the expectations that he's had, high expectations, I might add. But nonetheless, they've done very well in the transfer window. Of course, they let go of Kevin De Bruyne, who's now taken his talents to Italy, to Napoli. But they brought in one of my favorite players, Tijjani Reinders from Milan. They brought in Cherki from Lyon. And I think they're going to be a formidable force, right? When you're perennial winners like Guardiola and Man City, it becomes part of your DNA. And I expect them to be up there challenging. So I think that's going to be my top 4, not necessarily in that order. We'll save our prediction for who we think will actually win the Premier League in just a moment. But I think the top 4, you're looking at Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, and Man City. For the European positions, so from spots 5 through 7, so that's going to be your Europa League and the Conference League. If Newcastle end up losing Alexander Isak, I think they're going to really struggle. Yes, they brought in Anthony Elanga former Man United player, big fan of his. But losing Isak, no matter who they replace him with, is going to be big, big shoes to fill. And with Champions League football again, I think they might be dropping out. Unless, of course, between now and the end of the window, they make some very crucial moves to really put themselves back in the fold. But for right now, I'm not sure that they're going to be able to maintain the form that they've showed from last year. I'm going to say that Tottenham Hotspur, I know they finished, 16th last year, or maybe 15th, I can't recall, but I really, really love their new coach, the former Brighton manager who's now head of Tottenham. And they've made some very key moves as well in the market, bringing Kudus from West Ham, a great, great player. And I think that they're going to have a steady season. I can see them finishing in the top 7 just off of the strength of their coach and how he's able to galvanize and get the best out of players. I mean, what he did for Brentford, bringing them from the Championship into the Premier League and being able to sustain their position in the top half of the Premier League for the last, 4 or 5 years. I think with greater resources, better players at his disposal, I expect Thomas Frank to really be able to make his mark on that Tottenham squad and get them up the table. I think Aston Villa is going to fall into one of those European positions, either Conference League or Europa League. Unai Emery is a great coach that I have huge admiration and respect for. And they haven't really made any moves in the transfer window. I think they have some financial fair play issues that they're dealing with. But again, with a coach of his class, of his reputation, you're going to expect good things. And they have a good squad already, right? Of course, they lost some of those key January loan players that they brought in, Rashford, Asensio. But with a coach like Unai Emery, you're always going to expect his teams to be challenging up there in the top half of the table. And then my surprise team to fill in that last spot in the Europa places is going to be Brighton. They came really close last year. They're a team that just have a way of recruiting young, talented players, and players like Baleba, who I really like. And I think they're going to make their mark as well. Their coach is going into his second season in the Premier League now. He's well familiar with the terrain, understands the league, and I think they may not necessarily be a surprise team, because I think people respect what Brighton bring to the table. I mean, we could just look at the players that they've sold over the last few years. It really tells you the story about their recruiting and their business model. And so I expect them to be up in those positions again. As far as the relegation battle is concerned, I think over the last 3 to 4 years, the 3 teams that have made the jump from the Championship to the Premier League have all gone back down. And honestly, I don't see that changing. Yes, I like the business that Sunderland has done in this window. I think they've spent in excess of almost £200 million. I think the one key player I like that they brought in is Andingra from Brighton. He's a hell of a player that I like a lot, very explosive on the wings. I think he's going to have a great season for them, but I'm not sure that it's going to be enough to keep them up. Of course, Burnley and Leeds, kind of the same situation. I like Leeds. I think they retained a lot of the same players that they had when they were relegated 2 years ago, I think it was now. And so those players have Premier League experience. They have a coach with Premier League experience as well. So you'd want to think that they're going to do well. But when you look at the competition in the Premier League and you look at the trend over the last few years with these teams that have come up from the Championship, making that step up, they just aren't able to sustain it in the Premier League. And so I think those 3 teams are going to go back down. As far as the individual awards, I think for the Golden Boot, I think that if Arsenal can, like I said, really build around Victor Gyökeres, I think he really could be the difference for them. And he has a point to prove. He has a chip on his shoulder. We know that he played in the Premier League with Brighton a few years ago, didn't quite cut it. went down to the lower league with Coventry, did really well, earned his move to Sporting, and then went crazy there. And he's back in the Premier League to prove himself, to show that he's a player that can produce the same numbers in the Portuguese league in the Premier League. And we know that hasn't always worked out, right? Case in point, Darwin Núñez from Liverpool. He was a big money signing from Benfica, scored a ton of goals in Portugal, and just hasn't quite worked out in the Premier League. But I think with Gyökeres, having had that Premier League experience before and played in England for majority of his career and now coming back, I can see him topping the charts in the Premier League this year. So I'm going to go for Gyökeres to win the Golden Boot. Just because of the circumstances surrounding him. He's coming into a ready-made team that has wingers that are willing and ready to cross. I mean, that's all that Arsenal has missed out on, is a focal point in the box to finish off chances. We know they're going to create. We know they're strong defensively. All they've needed is someone up top to put those chances away. And I think he's coming into a tailor-made situation to thrive and flourish in the Premier League. And I'm going to predict that he will win the Golden Boot. For the top assist creator in the Premier League, I'm going to go for Florian Wirtz. I think similar situation. He's coming into a championship team with superstars all around him, right? Not to say that he wasn't surrounded by superstars in Leverkusen, but clearly there's a big step up going from Leverkusen to Liverpool, right? The likes of Mo Salah, Cody Gakpo, Luis Diaz, even though he's tipped to be moving away. But I think he's going to elevate his game, and he's going to be the central hub of everything positive that happens in that final third. I think he's going to have a lot of assists, a lot of goal contributions, and I'm predicting Florian Wirtz to have the most assists in the Premier League for the 25-26 season. For the Golden Glove, I'm going to go with David Raya, a player that I really like. I think with that back four in front of him, with Gabriel and Saliba, Miles Skelly, and White and Calafiori, and they just signed that new defender Mosquera. I mean, they're stacked, and of course in midfield with Zubamendi, with Declan Rice. I know that they lost their linchpin with the allegations. I'm not going to go into that they let him go. But nonetheless, that defense is solid. And I think David Raya is probably going to win the Golden Boot. It really hurts me to speak so positively about Arsenal. But if I'm just being objective, I think Arteta has done a good job assembling the squad. And they've done really well over the last few seasons. And like I said, they missed that one piece in a focal point, in a deadly striker to really bring everything together. And for that reason, I am predicting, and it hurts me to make this prediction because I have a lot of Arsenal friends, and the banter is always heavy, it's always thick, but I'm afraid that I think this is going to be Arsenal's year. I think Arsenal is going to win the Premier League. And again, it's going to come down to that new striker, Victor Gyökeres. I think if Arteta can make him the focal point, build the tactics, build the game plan around feeding him chances, I think he will get 20 plus goals this season. And I think that is the difference from going from second place to first place. Because when you look at that Arsenal team, not only the 11 but the bench, they're pretty stacked, and they've been well-groomed, well-oiled machine for the last few years, and they've just not had the striker to get them those 20 goals a season to get them over the line. I mean, Bukayo Saka is a wonderful player, probably the best English player in the Premier League. I think Jude Bellingham would probably give him a run for his money in terms of the best English player right now. But you can't expect the winger to get you 20 plus goals and win you the league unless you're Mo Salah, and he's a one of one. But when you add in a lethal striker like Gyökeres, if he can fulfill his potential, I think that with the defensive solidity that they have, a really good keeper, strong midfield, good wingers, a good bench, I think they have everything that they need to make that step up from second to first place. So there you have it. I am predicting Arsenal to win the league for the 25-26 season. And I really hope that doesn't happen so that I can banter my Gunner friends and my Arsenal friends and supporters. That's what I think will happen. And yeah, I hope that Man U can have a successful season going from 15th to top 10. I think will be a success, but that's a video for another day. I'd like to know what your predictions are, so hit me in the comments. Let me know who you think will win the league, who you think will finish in the top 4, who will win the Golden Boot, who will have the most assists, the Golden Glove, the European positions, and obviously who will get relegated. That's all for me today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, subscribe, and share. So happy that the season is going to be back in a few weeks and looking forward to many videos to come. Thank you. Take care. Cheers.